the worst part, Brandon, is when you have such good guests on, it's the small talk that happens before the actual show. Because then I'm like, save it.
We have plenty of small talk.
Cue the small talk.
And do it again. Here we go.
Well, we have recent 2025 finalists for the Denver. Is it Colorado or
it's
Denver?
It's the Colorado Chamber of Commerce, actually. But
very cool.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason, like, obviously with the I'm from Denver podcast, we're like, man, we need to have some names on here. But then obviously with Brandon being an athlete, we need to have people who represent Colorado well, but then someone that relates to what Brandon's field is, just being an athlete. And I think we have it with Apex Cool Labs.
That's
so
right.
This is exciting, man.
Yeah, so 2025 finalists for the Colorado Chamber of Commerce, coolest things made in Colorado. Yeah,
absolutely,
both literally and figuratively.
Both literally and figuratively.
We are for sure the coolest thing.
That's right.
Literally.
On the literally
right.
on the finalist list.
Yeah, so we have Evie and Ariel, the founders of Apex Cool Labs. And, before we get into the actual product, let's just talk about how you made it to Colorado.
You want to go first? You should go first.
Yeah.
Your story's
kind of wild.
Story.
Yeah. I was, I'm originally from Minnesota, but I was living in San Francisco for about 10 years leading up to 2020. The pandemic hit. Well, actually, I should back up. I was about to move to New York for my job.
You were like in the peak epicenters of...
Yes. I was like, and so this is like early March 2020. I'm gearing up. We sell our condo.
And Evie was like a high power marketer for a startup company.
Oh, wow.
Sure.
She was.
And I was moving for the same job, just relocating East Coast. And everything had been sold, packed up. We had a place to go. The movers were there grabbing the last things. And this is the day they announced the lockdown in New York. And we're like, well, we're not going to New York right now. So we ended up, we were about to sell the car and get on a plane and go. And we instead drove to Minnesota to be with my family to ride out this pandemic thing.
For a couple weeks.
For a couple weeks, right?
Load up on toilet paper. You're all right. Yeah.
And so we drive across the country, which I have to tell you was super surreal in those early days of the pandemic because everything was shut down. And we actually drove through Colorado on the way to Minnesota, and we had just barely made it through. I can't even remember, but had we stopped 20 miles earlier, we wouldn't have been able to get a hotel because they had shut everything down. I mean, it was wild times. Anyway.
Sounds like a Last of Us episode.
It was really, really a little bit creepy, to be honest. And we ended up hanging out with my family for what ended up being 4 months and decided, hey, let's go spend the summer someplace where we want to be. Ended up being Colorado. We got here in July. And 3 weeks later, I said, we are never leaving the state. And we looked for a house, bought a house. Within 2 months, we were in our new home, live here in Lakewood, Colorado. And life completely changed, and I absolutely love it.
What's funny is Evie, before I knew her, clearly was like a city person and never thought, and she lives in total suburbia.
This is true. Total 180. This is a bit of a pattern in my life, though, is that something happens and I just all right, we're going down this path. And
yeah, that's awesome. And then had a job at that point, or you were just starting new?
No, I had a job. I was still working for a software company that, I was moving for them, to go out to the East Coast with them. So I continued to work for them and did up until Apex Cool Labs happened.
Wow. And then what did you do? How did you get to Colorado?
Yeah, my story goes back a little further, which is, so I grew up on the East Coast, grew up in New Jersey. I'm first-gen American. My mom was born in Russia. My dad was born in England. And I had grown up in New Jersey, went to school in Philadelphia for college. And one of the reasons I went to school in Philly was I wanted to step a little out of my comfort zone. I don't really like cities, but both my
you guys
parents
are opposites.
both my parents had grown up in cities and just always extolled some of the virtues of living in a city. And I was like, well, I should experience this. This is a time to kind of grow your boundaries. But then after college, I was like, I don't want to be. Yeah. It's like I've had it. I've had that experience. I see some of the good of it, but I don't want to really be in a city. And I had actually met a girl during an internship in Alaska that was going to school in Colorado. So we dated for the summer, and then I visited her in Colorado. I'd never been out here. It was just like, I got to move to Colorado. We broke up before I came out here, but I was trying to decide on grad school. So my background's in physics. I had been accepted to several programs to do my PhD in physics, but wanted to defer for a year to kind of decide where's the right place to be. And I figured I'm going to be in grad school for a while. So living in a place, how important is that to me for sort of my state of being, my mental health, all those things. And so I was like, well, I most think I want to live in Boulder. Let me go live there for a year and see how it is. So I moved here.
I went to school to see you. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
So I had been accepted to see you, deferred for a year, moved out here knowing no one, worked as a carpenter, and then worked at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration actually for a little bit before grad school. Went to grad school here, got my PhD in physics, and I've just been like a Boulder lifer ever since. So I actually worked in the physics department for really, I still even have a small consulting role in the physics department. So I've been in the physics department basically since I moved here, more or less.
And then talk about your athletic backgrounds.
My athletic background. Well, I'm a physicist, so I'm a little nerdy. So I was never a particularly good athlete. I wrestled a little in high school, but I've always enjoyed working out. So I like to lift. I did a lot of climbing when I first moved to Colorado. So I generally enjoy staying in shape, but I'm not a very good athlete. I think, this will, I wonder if this will resonate with you. I realized much later in life, you can't really be cerebral to be an athlete when you're in the moment of competition. Like I'm a thinker. So like climbing works well for me because you can try something, think about it, redo it. But, like when you're wrestling, if you're thinking, maybe, no, you have to get to that place where you're moving on instinct. Like I'm sure when you were running a route, you weren't like, well, maybe I should, you're going off instinct, right? So if I went back to do athleticism, I'd be like, practice hard, be in an instinctual mode when you're in the moment of competition. But
it's important to find that flow state where you get in that zone. But I've seen free solo. You don't want to do a whole lot of thinking on that.
No, but that's the moment of competition, right?
Right.
But he practiced really hard to get there.
That's right.
But yeah.
And then you kind of reach that flow state,
right?
And you're in that moment. I had a football coach when I was in San Francisco, Coach Sullivan. He says, what kind of music do you listen to? I was like, I listen to gangster rap music. He's like, whatever. He's an old Italian man. He's like, whatever. He's like, you heard of Metallica? You heard of Led Zeppelin? I was like, yeah. He's like, when you're running routes, you want to be hearing elevator music. Right. And so just kind of like slowing everything down and just like that calm and peace. And so while you're out there like grunting and like teeth gritted together and you're like trying to run this route, but think calm and be calm. And that was really a pivotal point in my career to kind of think about that flow state and what that means and what that feels like.
Such an interesting piece of advice.
Yeah.
So what do you work out to?
Gangster rap.
She's not in a flow state there. He's trying to move some weight.
No, but I run to EDM.
Oh, okay.
Oh, interesting.
And that helps me get in the flow state because the beats per minute. There's some science behind the beats per minute, and it helps with the euphoric, my euphoric state when I'm running the EDM music.
What was your pump up music before a game, though?
Gangster rap, Metallica. I was listening to heavy metal. Yeah.
All right, Evie lifts heavy.
So I'm
Evie lifts heavy.
Evie lifts heavy.
That's my handle. I'm actually, I would say, a late bloomer athlete. I played a little bit of stuff in high school. I was a very bad soccer player. I did a lot of solo sports, swimming, running, figure skating, but was never great at anything. Then went to college, smoked a pack a day for a while.
12 years.
Thanks.
I like how much you know about each other. It's a great partnership.
We'll get into why that is. Yeah.
And then I, about 10-ish years ago, maybe 12 now, I quit smoking, discovered weightlifting, and got really into it. And one of the things I did when I moved out here, and probably one of the reasons why I absolutely love living in suburbia, is I built a garage gym. And such an amazing, gift to have, to just be able to open up your door and go to your gym and get your workout in. But anyway, I recently discovered high rocks as a sport. Have you guys heard of this?
No.
It is taking over the world, literally. It started in Germany, 2017. It's become big in the United States over the last 2 years. It's basically like a 10K and CrossFit had a baby and made a race. And it's the same race all the time, everywhere. No matter where you are in the world, you basically run a kilometer, do a station, repeat that 8 times. And
I say what the stations are, though.
The stations are like all functional fitness sort of things. So your ski erg, sled push, sled pull, wall balls, walking lunges with a sandbag, farmers carry, things like that. But again, it's standardized. It's the same thing. You know exactly what you're walking into. And I started competing in that with a friend of mine here in Colorado. And we went out there, ran our first race as what's known as the doubles pro division. Pro simply means heavier weights than the regular division. And when you run it as a team, you run together, split the stations. Anyway, long story short, we run our first race and we qualify for Worlds. And we're like, okay, I guess we're like good at this. And then, at first we thought, okay, well maybe it was just because it wasn't quite a big sport this year.
So at this point, you quit the pack a day, right?
Oh yeah, no, that was 12 years ago. But we competed again the following year and qualified again, and it's kind of my sport.
Well, going back into it, so what was it? Was it because there wasn't a lot of people competing in the sport, or was it because you were that good?
I think it was definitely a little bit of both. So, for sure the second year when we qualified, I went and ran some of the numbers and looked at it, and like our time, had we run in any other race in the US, 50% of the time we would have qualified and 50% of the time we wouldn't have. So, we're good. We're good. We're certainly not the greatest. But it was awesome. It's really cool as an adult to have found a sport you can compete in. Yeah. And, but yeah, prior to that, I mean, honestly, I trained for the love of training, similar to Ariel. And that's, my obsession with training is what led me to discover palm cooling as a technique and sort of the birth of this whole company.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you are training, are you attached to the results? Do you feel like you like the results, the physique, or is it the process of the training and the equipment and the toys and
honestly, it's all of it. I love the process. I don't think you can stay in any sort of game if you don't love the process. But I absolutely love the results. And one of my, I think you'll appreciate this. One of my favorite books in life, in business, in anything is The Score Takes Care of Itself. Bill Walsh, legendary coach, 49ers, just an amazing approach to life. Like when you want an outcome, in his case, a Super Bowl, right? You want that, or we want to build a successful company, right? We want to build this up and be, wildly successful, right? Like yes, you want that outcome, but then you have to do so many little things well along the way. And you're going to have opportunities where you win, opportunities where you lose. Sometimes it's your fault, sometimes it's not. And you can only control what you can control in yourself. So that was a very long-winded answer to say, I love the process of training. I love the grind of it. I enjoy the progression over time. But yeah, I want to look good naked and I want to lift heavy weight. I want to hit certain numbers.
I mean, Evie can deadlift 300 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah,
I think not
awesome.
You live to the Instagram handle.
She lifts heavy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, so at what point did that? I guess it's one of those like chicken before the egg type things, but is that like you do all that and then you're like, man, I need to train harder, so I need to work on something that's going to make me better as a physical athlete? Like what triggered kind of the Apex Cool Labs to be like, I need to get better? Like, is that how that happened?
Sort of. So I'll start and then pass off to you. Okay. So I often say, if I'm not working out or working, I'm probably listening to a podcast about one of those two things, which is what I was doing 4-ish years ago. I was listening to a Huberman Lab podcast on which he had Dr. Craig Heller from Stanford University, who has spent his life studying this technique called palm cooling, which we can get into. And on the podcast, he talked a lot about this wild study he did on pull-ups where he had people come in. These were trained individuals. They did pull-ups. They cooled their palms in between sets and did more pull-ups. And over about 6 weeks, they were increasing their volume by over 100%. And I was like, holy cow. I had been plateaued at 7 pull-ups for at least 5 years. And I just thought, that's my theoretical max. I can't do any more pull-ups. And then there's, I hear this study and that all I have to do is cool my palms and I can do more pull-ups. I'm like, this is fascinating. How do I do this? And at the time, there was no device on the market. This was all being done in labs using sort of, hacked together lab prototypes that on the podcast too, they did not explain really how
the parameters
to do it. They just talked about the results. So I was like, I don't know, I'm going to put my hands in cold water in my garage gym in a bucket and like do this. So I tweeted, I made a video of myself. You'll also appreciate this. In the video, I'm wearing this Broncos hat and because it's freezing, but I had the garage door open and I'm, my hands are in cold water and I tweet this like video out and I'm like, am I doing this right? And got very lucky that 3 months later, Ariel found my tweet.
Yeah, so Evie and I completely didn't know each other before this. Similar to her, I'd heard this podcast. And if this was kind of COVID times, I guess it was 2022, right?
Yeah.
And, everyone's working from home and I had some free time and I like to tinker. And I heard these same results. But I was like, man, that seems crazy that you can increase your pull-ups like this. So being a physicist, I went out. It's all published research. I read the papers to kind of understand what are the parameters? What temperatures do you need? Why? And we can get into some of the science of that. But the first thing I did was I went to the local hardware store, McGuckin's in Boulder.
Yeah. Hey, that's a good hardware store.
It's
man.
a great hardware store.
I love
It's
that
been
place.
there forever.
They literally have everything you need.
They have everything you need, and they're just so helpful.
And so many snacks.
Yeah,
everything.
They let you bring your dog. So it's a true Colorado kind of place, right?
Yeah.
So go in there, pick up some plumbing parts, put together basically some copper pipes in a recirculating loop with a recirculating pump that I can put into water at the right temperature. So that way I have water flowing through these copper pipes because copper is a good conductor of heat. And then I have the water set to the right temperature and have it continuously flowing through. Because I tried putting my hands in a sink at the right temperature, like some water at the right temperature, and tried doing this. I'm like, maybe I feel something, but it's not obvious. I need to do this right. And the very first time I tried it, I had a friend living with me at the time, another PhD in aerospace engineering who liked to work out. I have a basement gym. And we tried this with bench press. And the very first time I tried it, literally doubled my volume. So doing 5 sets of 5 normally, where that last rep is like hard to push out, we did 10 sets. And the 6th set felt easier than the first. So I was like, wow, this is insane. And started trying it with pull-ups. So at the time I was 44. I'd never done 100 pull-ups in a session, not in a set, but in a session. And pretty soon was able to do over 100 pull-ups in a session. Now this was many sets, but I could just keep, this is the thing about palm cooling. It lets you just kind of keep going. So if you're willing to do more volume, you can kind of keep going. So I was like, man, this is crazy. This really works. So I need to see, are there any other people trying to DIY this? And I was looking on the internet, found Evie's tweet. I was like, all right. We got into a conversation. Here are the parameters you want. I actually made this sort of like home-built device.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you come over and try it? So her and her husband came to my house. Her husband and I soldered her up one of these.
How wild that you guys are both in Colorado, though.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. That's
yeah, we realized that. We were like, well, I think the Broncos beanie was a clue.
Yeah.
But then I realized, she's in Lakewood. She's only
she
45
could be in
minutes
Durango.
away. Yeah. She was only 45 minutes away. So her and her husband came over. Her husband and I soldered up one of these versions. Well, she did push-ups and pull-ups in my basement using my home-built prototype. And I think you did more push-ups and pull-ups than you ever had in a session, right?
Yeah, I did. And, and I was like, this is wild. So I went home with my own version of the early prototype and I replicated close the Stanford study. So the Stanford study on pull-ups, they had people doing pull-ups twice a week for 6 weeks, each time doing 10 sets of pull-ups. I wasn't willing to do that many pull-ups. So what I did was 1 session a week. I did 10 sets of pull-ups till failure with 3 minutes of cooling my palms between each set. And I went from 7 to 14 in 8 weeks as my top set, 14 pull-ups. And my overall volume in a given session was up 50%. And I was just like, this is crazy. I then did it with push-ups, went from 20 to 42 in another 8 weeks of once a week doing this. And I was like, this is wild. And so I lift with palm cooling and our device now every single day, like since then. I don't lift without it.
Wow.
Yeah, this is incredible. So the early device, so you go in the hardware store and you're like MacGyver in there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is all based on the white papers.
Yeah. Well, the published papers.
I mean, the published papers, and it's specifically called out copper.
No, so let's talk a little science. Let's talk some science. So the whole key here is everywhere that you have hairless skin, what we call glabrous tissue, that's going to be the palms of your hands, soles of your feet, and sort of your cheeks beard line. You can also see this if you ever look at a picture of a great ape, wherever they don't have hair on their skin. That's where you have this glabrous tissue.
Yeah.
And that tissue has two interesting components to it. A big one is that, one, it's smooth and hairless, but also underneath you have special vasculature known as arteriovenous anastomoses. So this is direct connections between arteries and veins. Everywhere else on your body, you have arteries run to a capillary network that come back to veins. Here you have direct connections, so the blood flow is very high. In fact, you can get about 10 times more blood flow through these skin areas than other skin areas when you're hot. And one of the main functions of these AVAs, as they're called, is thermoregulation. So when you're very cold, they vasoconstrict and keep the blood in your core. That's what keeps the blood in your core. When you're very warm, they open up, let blood flow to your extremities, and it's a great place to dump heat. And where this comes from is your mammalian history, where if you were walking on the savannah or something, the ground was cooler potentially than the air. You could dump heat into the ground. So it's just an amazing place to remove heat from your body. So what's interesting is they're very, very sensitive to the temperature. So to get the maximum effect, the basic name of the game is hold something as cool as possible without causing vasoconstriction. Because what you're really trying to do is cool that blood. You're trying to take that heat away from your body to cool your blood. Because your muscles internally can actually get quite hot. You have no internal thermal perception of the heat within your muscles. You only have your exterior perception. In fact, there are amazing studies that can show someone, you like cool them off with cool water and a towel and things, and they're like, oh, I feel great. And their core temperature you're measuring is actually still rising. So you don't have access to it. I don't know, have you ever been in practice in really hot times and had any heat illness symptoms?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It can happen really fast, right? And your body gives you access to that information by being like, oh my God, I feel nauseous or brain foggy.
And
you don't get it
and
easily.
then the muscle cramps, and then the dizziness, and and then the only thing that coaches would do in our past was like put the ice on her neck, or take the ice towel, wrap it around the neck, or I think that was it.
Yeah. That was common to do, right? And that's because perceptually that feels good, but it doesn't actually remove that much heat. So what's so interesting is your muscle, your skin, your fascia, they're all made to insulate you. So when your muscles internally get hot, it's actually difficult to remove that heat. But if you can, just like if you
So you're saying if he would have held the ice, if the coach said hold the ice,
that actually wouldn't help because you vasoconstrict. It's too cold. The whole key to this is, and why it's difficult to make a device is, it needs to be cool, not cold. Most people vasoconstrict at a skin temperature or holding a device that's below about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's kind of a weird temperature band. It's easy to make something ice cold. It's difficult to make something stay at that sort of 50-degree range. That's kind of a funky range to stay at. And that's part of the reason why this technique wasn't really out there much for a long time.
So that's what you did with your MacGyver rig.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I used copper because it's a good thermal conductor. Run water through it so you're continuously removing the heat, because there's something else we should talk about, which is called thermal barriers. But and then had the water at sort of 55, 56 degrees, kept it at that temperature. And then, in fact, I eventually, with my MacGyver rig, got sort of a fancier temperature controlled chiller to hook it up to really dial in, like, what's the right temperature to have this device at. But yeah, it's that cool, not cold, that's really the key to making the effect work well. Because people, it's even funny, once people start to see the power of this, they're like, oh, I want it to be colder. It's like, no. Colder doesn't actually work. It inhibits the effect. It's that cool, not cold, where it's the sweet spot.
Yeah, because that's interesting is because that's interesting because I've noticed, I've seen studies in psychology that keeping like a cold pack in the freezer for someone experiencing, a psychological event, they can take it out and hold it in between their hands and experience some soothing in times of stress.
Yes.
But however, it's cold. It's too cold.
Well, that can work for a grounding effect, to give someone a sensation. People talk about it as sort of bringing you out of your head into your extremities, but we actually have people use this for anxiety as well.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Really? Either athletic sort of performance anxiety. For example, we have gymnasts who really suffer from cases of the twisties, right? Yes. And they have intense performance anxiety. They will use this to ground themselves. Or we work with D1 basketball players who they're using it both to improve recovery during timeouts, but also they started to notice, oh, wow, I can stay in the game more. My head is in the game. I can hear, I can focus on the coach during timeouts. I'm just more present. And so there is definitely something going on. There is less research into this, although I think we'll start to see more in the coming years. But there is a lot of indications that when you are cooling your blood and through your palms, you are actually sort of transitioning, if you will, from that sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system, or basically down regulating, calming yourself, not in a way that makes you relaxed and you want to go to sleep, which would not be good in an athletic endeavor, but in a way that just keeps you in the game.
It on almost everyone, one of the quick effects you see is when people hold these kinds of devices, their heart rate lowers very quickly. So it recovers more towards baseline. And you can imagine when you're feeling anxious, what starts to happen? You get these symptoms of basically associated with heating up, right? You might start to feel hot, sweat, your heart might race. This helps calm you down and bring you back from that state. So there's not really any published research, but we have had enough anecdotal reports that, as we like to say, there seems to be a there.
That's right.
Well, and so what happened with you two then? So you go, I want to go back there because I feel like where you're at is so amazing, but it's like you're in his gym or in his basement, you're realizing this is working, and then you leave there and then you say, hey, we should work together, or how did that?
Not yet, no.
No, so I went home with my own version of the original MacGyver plumbing part version, which I had hooked up to a Yeti in my garage gym. And it was great because I think timing wise, this was February-ish. So it just kind of stayed at the right temperature, which was awesome. But Ariel kept tinkering on a device and he was asking that question, how do you make something like this portable?
Yeah, because there was a device that was starting to come on the market. They had talked a little bit about it on the podcast called the Cool Mitt. And that was a spin-off of these sort of Stanford study devices. But it was $1,500 for the device. It only cooled one hand. It was big. And at the time, there was a wait list for it. You had to be a professional Olympic athlete to even get one. So just as a passion project, I got really curious. Being in Boulder, I have friends who are really elite climbers, very, very good. And I was curious, is there something you could take to the gym or take outdoors to the crag? And this big device worked, but it's not really portable. It's not convenient. So I was just curious. This was a total passion project. And thought, wow, I need something that's well insulated. I need something that can hold its temperature well. And I need something that can really remove that heat from your palms in this effective, continuous way. So one of the things we should mention is this idea of thermal barriers. So if you've ever done you've gotten in an ice bath or a cold plunge, right? Mm-hmm. If you just sit there, it's not so bad. But if you like move around, it's awful, right?
It is.
Yeah. And that's because very quickly, if you were to hold, for instance, a aluminum can that was cool and had liquid in it, you'll locally warm it up. And then heat flows from hot to cold. So if you make a thermal barrier, it doesn't cool you down as quickly. You're really for good heat transfer. So I discovered these things called heat pipes, which are a really amazing technology we can talk about. They're used in satellites, they're used in your computer, there's actually a version in your cell phone, but there are no moving parts heat pumps. So I sort of hit on this idea of the combination of a well-insulated device that uses heat pipes to transfer the heat and what's called a phase change material to stabilize the temperature. For so like 3 months, my freezer was filled with all these concoctions of phase change materials to try to hit on the right thing that would hold this device at the right temperature. But this was just a passion project. So I started off, I have a laser cutter. So I was modifying these soup cans, basically these insulated soup containers from Japan, and modifying them by hand and like doing everything. And I hit on a design that I was like, I think this really works well. So,
and you guys are communicating still the whole time?
A little bit.
A little. Like, I was sharing my results with them. I was like, okay, so I did this pull-up study, and like, here's where I got.
So you're using that data from from her workouts? Oh, go ahead.
Not necessarily. Are you?
No, just like I was just like, hey, this is working. And then then I do the push-up thing, and I'm like, this is amazing.
And then, are you doing any competitions?
No, at the time I wasn't.
Okay, so you're just training.
I'm just training.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I hit on this device. I made a couple sets that I tested mainly at the climbing gym. And then when I felt like a pretty good prototype. Just Evie had been such a good field tester. I was like, here, try these out. And the moment she tried them, she's like, you need to sell these. And I'm like,
the soup cans.
The soup cans. I was like, you need to sell these.
The Japanese soup cans.
You can see it. I mean, we call them the OGs these days.
Yeah.
They're
blue.
They're blue. And you know, I brought them to Evie. She loved them. And when she told me you need to sell these, I'm like, well, I'm a physicist, but she's a marketer. And so we thought maybe we could team up on this. And just as I think both of us in our minds were as sort of like a fun business to create, not anything crazy. Well, at least me. maybe you had different plans. So we spent a month basically. A big thing in our company is walking meetings. So we spent a month. Colorado's beautiful, right?
Yep.
Walking and talking and just seeing like, are we philosophically aligned? Do we,
can we work together?
Can we work together?
Can we collaborate?
And we'll talk about that.
I mean, it was a really interesting journey because, Ariel has a lot of strong opinions. I think I do too. I don't know. Okay, maybe I do too. Okay, I apparently do. We have strong opinions, and and there was, this is his invention. This was his baby, and I'm like, listen, like, if we're gonna do this together, there are certain things that are important to me. There are certain things that were important to you. For example, I really wanted, I was like, I've spent my career helping other people build up their businesses. I've often been sort of a number two in a couple of companies. And I was like, if I'm going to do something on my own, I want to be 50-50. I want to be in this together. And I understand that this is your invention. So if that's not cool with you, no problem. But like, this is important to me. He was cool with that, which is awesome. Like truly amazing. And,
once you get to know Evie, she goes,
I go all in.
It's more than all in. I don't know what the phrase is for more than all in, but it's like it's more than all in.
Yeah. So I was like, if I'm really going to do this, I want, I want to be 50-50. So, and then something that was really important to Ariel is building our product in the United States and supporting US manufacturing. And that was something that he was like, I don't care how much it costs. Like, this is something I want to do. And that might mean that we're not as profitable or we have to move more slowly, but I need you to be okay with that. And I was like, okay, I'm in. So there were a lot of topics like that we covered. Topics like, what do we do if we hire someone and one of us doesn't like them? We went through like all of the horror stories that could possibly happen in a company and talked through what we would do. We even have it written down, and we signed a document. I don't know if it's legally binding technically, but we took the time to really think through, how could this go wrong? And how are we going to operate then?
And we also we came up with this idea of what we refer to as the champion of something. So we have to agree on things since we're 50-50, but it's like when it's a marketing concern, you're the champion of it. So, it's kind of like the right of way. Permission is granted, not assumed. It's like if there's something where it's like Evie feels really strongly about it, I'm gonna go. We really haven't had any conflicts
No.
of that. But I mean, it's the idea being, I'm gonna cede my opinion to your expertise if this is something you feel really strongly about. So like if it's product, that's where I'm the champion. If it's marketing, that's where Evie's the champion. And so Evie's the CEO of the company. I'm the CTO. And when we formed this, we made a little website. We were making these using my laser cutter and these Japanese soup containers and all by hand. I mean, it took us probably a total of, to really put together a set, 15 hours. We were cutting all the packaging on my laser cutter. Like everything was done by hand. And we thought we'd just be selling to some fitness enthusiasts.
Some cyclists up in
Yeah.
Boulder.
Yeah, some things like that.
Someone who wanted to do more pull-ups.
Right.
I mean,
Really early, the Edmonton Oilers contacted us. So NHL team, they'd been looking for something like this. And you probably know this really well as a professional athlete. The strength and conditioning coach is like, I have a cool mitt. I've tried it out. It works. But these are professionals. I can put it in that guy's stall. He uses it or he doesn't. I can't tell him you've got to use this. So he's like, I can't get people to use it. I need something that's like smaller, more portable, more friendly, like doesn't feel dorky, whatever it is. So they bought a set. And then pretty soon we were
in the hands of 4 Stanley Cup playoff teams within about 4 months of launching our website.
Wow.
And we were like, whoa.
So I don't know if you know this about hockey. These guys get blazing hot.
I can imagine.
Yeah, people think like, well, they're on ice. But especially the goalies, they're wearing 40 to 50 pounds of gear. They're usually the largest guys on the team, and they don't come off the ice.
And you're a physicist, so what's that? It's like the fogging window. It's like where the temperature inside is hotter than the air outside, and then
there's all kinds of things where like the most powerful mechanism you have to cool yourself is your sweat.
That's right.
If you're covered in insulating gear, your sweat doesn't do anything. All it does is dehydrate you. Because your body's like, we're hot, we need to cool down. But it's like, you've probably played in some humid ass places. You know that feeling of like, I'm sweating, but I'm not cooling down.
Right.
So like sweat is an amazing thing when it works. When it doesn't, or when you've got conditions where you're not getting that evaporative cooling. Sweat, if it drips off you, doesn't do anything for you. Sweat, if it doesn't evaporate, doesn't do anything for you. So they were having goalies cramping during the games. They're giving them electrolytes, they're doing all the things, but it's not enough. You need to remove some of that heat. So they were using them during the period breaks to help avoid cramping and keep their goalies fresher. And then I think there must be half the NHL nearly that's palm cooling in one way or another.
At least over a third at this point. It's become very, very common in the NHL to use palm cooling during breaks. We're starting to see it in other sports, NBA, MLS, Major League Soccer is starting to embrace this a lot. They play a lot in the heat, being able to cool down at halftime, come back out. You will run faster if you are cooler. There's a reason why most marathon records are set when it's about 58 degrees outside. And for every degree Fahrenheit, it goes above that sort of 58-ish range, you start slowing down. Seconds, your pace slows by a couple of seconds per minute mile pace. So that by the time you're running in the 90-degree heat, I mean, you're going to be, a minute slower than you would be. So we are just not equipped as humans to operate well when we are hot. And people think, oh, this is only, heat's only a factor if you're playing football in the Texas heat. It's a factor for anybody who's working out hard. You are generating heat within your body, and we're not great at dissipating that heat. We don't have many ways to do it. We can sweat and evaporate if that's available to us. We can radiate some of it out of our palms, but what you're doing when you're cooling your palms is you're just kind of turbocharging that natural effect. And if you can pull out some of that heat, you can just sustain a higher output longer, whatever that means in your sport.
But soon after we were seeing this use case, like we thought, oh, people want, no one actually, turns out no one really cares about doing more pull-ups for the most part. Like a few people do, but it's actually much more rare. Like most people don't want to do more work to do more pull-ups. They're like, what can I do to do less work and get more jack?
Yeah.
So,
right. So funny.
But,
true.
After seeing that, we're at the highest level of competition in hockey, we started to think, well, maybe this is more than just putting together hand-built soup cans.
Yeah.
Yes.
We need to, if we're going to do this, we're going to need to get molds built. We're going to need to get the product redesigned for manufacturing. We're going to do these things. So I know how to build things, but I didn't know much about how do you really manufacture something, right? So,
are you getting data from the NHL teams in that? Like, I imagine they're not going to tell you anything. Like, how do you, other than the fact that more teams are buying the product?
The strength and conditioning coach for the Oilers is he's Canadian. He's the nicest guy. We've met him in person. He's just a good dude. So he was willing to talk to us and give us feedback. A lot of people, you're right, are pretty cagey. They don't really want to tell you what's going on.
Because as a professional athlete, you don't want to give away the secret, right? If you're
special teams, that's valuable.
And
data.
one of the other things, someone you should totally have on your podcast at some point, who you will be like, this is amazing. We got hooked up early on with this really interesting sort of elite movement coach named Austin Einhorn, who's based in Colorado now. And he's a very different thinker, if you will. He thinks about how did humans evolve? What are their movement patterns? How can I avoid injury in professional athletes, or really any athletes? But just a very different kind of thought process going into things. And the way we got hooked up with him is, since I know people in the climbing community, one of my friends knew this offensive lineman, Wes Schweitzer. He just retired, but big dude, 330 pounds at the time, who climbed. And climbing, there was a really interesting article in Climbing Magazine about him, that he had shoulder issues and these things. And by doing bouldering and climbing movements, it helped fix a lot of it. So I DM'd him early on when we were still making the soup can prototypes. And I said, you could seem like a guy who thinks outside the box. Have you ever tried palm cooling? And he was like, I have actually. I like it. I was like, would you be willing to try one of these? And he said, yeah. And at the time we were making a pretty narrow diameter version. I was like, can you send me a picture of your hand with some measurements? Because I'm guessing you're a big dude. So we made this version for him. I called the XL, with a bunch more heat pipes. And he tried them and liked them. And I said, can you tell me how you heard about palm cooling? Was it with your team? And he said, no, it's with this sort of private coach I go to, this guy, Austin. So I got in touch with Austin. He got a pair. And literally, I think the day after he got a pair, because he had been using the Cool Mitt, he's like, have you patented these? Or what is the thing? This is amazing. And he was connected to all of these elite athletes, Olympic athletes, professional athletes. So we really got a boost from him into sort of some of these more elite spaces. And he's been a great supporter of ours and just opened a lot of doors for us. But yeah, then we were like, we should go raise money.
Yeah, basically we were like, we can't make these soup containers forever, and we can't really scale up. It seems like there's a there. By the way, in all of this, we also started getting calls from fire departments who, similar to the NHL teams, had been looking for a solution. So you have to think about the fact that this research has been going on for 20 years into palm cooling. And, but there was no device, right? No device was available. So all these people who were worried about heat, whether for performance or safety, were some of these elite people were clued into this research, and they were looking for ways to do palm cooling for their audiences. So anyway, this fire department on the East Coast reaches out to us and is like, we've been looking for this. They found out about us through a Brazilian jiu-jitsu competitor, who had bought a pair of the soup cans. And, we're just like, okay, this is wild, right? And they bought
the OGs.
The OGs. The soup cans. And I think that fire department has 36 of the OG sets of them on what they call their incident rehab rigs. So they're helping their firefighters cool down between air tanks when they're fighting fires, or in their academies where they're training. And
the leading cause of on-duty death for firefighters is cardiac arrest. And there's a lot of evidence that heat strain is a major factor in that. So, these are people that protect our communities, and you don't want them being injured from something that is truly preventable. And they work in these brutal conditions. They have a lot of heavy gear. They come out, and again, they're just, you don't know that you're hot necessarily inside. You have to do things like hydration. All these things are important, but you need these extra steps to get people into a safer zone in terms of heat stress.
Yeah, it would be nice if our industrial athletes,
yes, exactly,
treated themselves like professional athletes, and to bring a piece of equipment from the professional athlete realm to our industrial athletes.
And I think
it's really powerful.
That shift is happening. But I mean, if you talk to firefighters, there's a real dichotomy. There are some departments which are progressive and newer, and I'm sure you've even seen this in the NFL. Like, you just have to suck it up. You need to be tough.
Is that still the case?
I wouldn't know now.
Okay.
But yes, when I was in the NFL, yes, there was a huge difference between what some teams were willing to experiment with and what some teams were more old school.
Oh, yeah.
Some teams were like, the cold tubs and ice and stem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it started to progress where some teams started using laser therapy and, other different modalities. And so it just kind of depends on who that strength coach is or who that athletic trainer is in that corporate professional sports environment, who's willing to take a risk and bring something in and then see the results and then kind of report back to the decision makers how it's improving performance amongst the players.
Yeah. So, I mean, safety is a huge thing for not only firefighters, but heat is actually the number one weather killer, far beyond
hurricanes, tornadoes,
floods,
all of this.
Everything. They call it the silent killer because, again, you don't know what's happening necessarily. But so many elderly,
I was going to say that elderly people for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
unhoused folks. Yeah,
it's a real issue.
Mm-hmm.
So go back to the manufacturing. How did that come to get to that level?
Yeah, to the mold.
Yeah.
Well, so one thing I want to shout out, just in this great state of Colorado, is that when we decided to go raise some money and look for investors to help us, because, going from the OGs to this is an expensive endeavor. There's designing for manufacturing. There is, the creating of all the molds, buying the inventory, all of these things, very expensive. And so we went out looking for angel investors, and there were a number of groups in Colorado that really helped us out. One is just shout out to the Golden startup community there. It is a thriving community. They're so startup, like founder friendly, helping connect you to various people or institutions that can help you. But also the state has a program in the where if you are in what they call an advanced industry, and I'm not going to get them all, but one of them is bioscience, you can apply to this program. And then the state will give any Coloradan who invests in you a tax write-off. Like not a deduction, but a true write-off of equal to their investment. So we got all of this investment from Colorado, folks who live here, residents, who, like dollar for dollar, were able to write off their investment in us. And that was because of that, we had people put in more money than they would have without that program or invest in the first place. And so it was a really amazing experience because it is tough to raise money.
Oh, yeah.
It was really tough, especially when you're not like software or, we don't have, we sell a product that is built to last. So we don't have
a product that's not mainstream that people even know that they
no one
need.
even understands it.
No one even understands
There's
it.
so many reasons why.
But Colorado, it's just, I mean, this, it has this energy. Like, it's not only an athletic and vibrant community, but there's some entrepreneurial spirit that's just kind of around. I don't know quite how to put my finger on it, but I'm sure you've felt this, that, there's people trying to do interesting, fun things here. So it's just a great place to do business, if you will.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. So we got the money.
It's a long story.
Around that, but we got the money. And, one of the things that I think was really incredible that Ariel did was finding our manufacturing partners, because not only is it technically difficult, but a lot of companies don't want to take a risk on you when you're two people selling this weird device that they don't understand.
Help you do more pull-ups.
Yeah, they're like not getting that.
Yeah, we went through. So we hired a design firm to help us because I just didn't. I know a lot more these days, but didn't know much about mold making. They did a really great job on the design and helped us figure out some of the parameters for. I don't know if you know much about molding, but you need to worry about things like what they call draft angles and how things are going to fit together and how to actually make it moldable.
The male and the female
Yeah,
part,
exactly.
Because you're using a plastic
Yeah.
mold,
Yeah.
and then the pipes are going into the plastic
Yeah,
to,
exactly.
to fill it with the
Yeah.
plastic.
Yeah, exactly.
The liquid plastic
Yeah,
material.
yeah, exactly. And so we met a local guy that was when we were sussing out design firms, really great guy, Avail Creative, who we didn't actually use for the design, but he was extremely knowledgeable about local vendors and things like that. So he kind of looked over the design for us and gave us some ideas of people to contact. And so for the plastic injection molding, got quotes from all over and found a place, local family-owned business in Dacono, who've been amazing. It's called V&S Molding. They are just like, they worked with us at every level. Do you know what I mean? Like they saw what we were trying to do. They believed in us, gave us good advice, gave us good pricing, figured out. I mean, a lot of these molds were very complex. Like the mold for the screw top is a 2,000-pound mold that they had to build a special frame for their forklift just to get in the molding machine. But they did that for us. Like, I mean, they've been just amazing to work with. And we can go right down there, look to see how things are going. And that's one of the great things about getting it made here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The fact that you're in Colorado, you guys came to Colorado, you guys found each other in Colorado, you found that in Colorado is amazing.
Now, there's some parts we can't make in the
For
U.S.
Sure.
I mean, the heat pipes in the stainless steel container just don't really exist here. The stainless steel container, the vacuum insulated stainless steel container, that's not made in the U.S. at all. Heat pipes, you can get them, but they're only for the defense industry and they cost about 10 times more a piece, so they're just not viable. But everything else that we can make here, our packaging's made here, the plastic injection molded parts are made here. The bottles that we use to hold the phase change material, they're not made in Colorado because there's actually no blow molding in Colorado, interestingly enough. There is blow molding's kind of specialized, but we found a place in Kansas City, Missouri, actually, that
your hometown, right? Yeah.
Makes pretty amazing, does some great blow molding work. But the ability to really go down to your supplier and talk to them, like our packaging people, they were amazing. Like, they just come to our house, give us samples to try out, things delivered right to our door. We do this business out of my house. And the molding people, they packed everything up into a box truck, brought it to our house, helped us unload it. Like, they didn't have to do any of that, and they really, I think, saw that we were trying to do something hard and we're willing to help. That's what I mean about that entrepreneurial spirit. And Ben at V&S Molding, the guy who owns it, the family business, he's just been like a lifesaver in so many ways when we were trying to do things. So
now, is the build match the demand, or is that now the marketing piece comes into that to where you have to build more awareness around it? Because it's great that you're getting all these people to find it, but after they kind of buy your product, they have your product, right? So how do you continue that kind of marketing and selling piece of the product?
Yeah. So in many ways, we treated this year. These didn't come out until January of this year. So for 2 years, we were selling the OGs and working on transitioning to this model. So when this came out, when we were finally shipping this in January, it really felt like actually day one of the company all over. And we treated this year very much as, let's just go say yes to everything. Let's follow every path, that every door that opens, let's go through it and let's see what happens. And so we have explored multiple sports. We've explored industrial safety, not just with the firefighters, but also with oil and gas and construction, manufacturing, people who work in extreme heat and have heat illness issues. So we really just like cast this super wide net this year to sort of see where is the market the strongest. And the reality is there's a lot of positive signals and all of them are going to take education. In each sport, you have a couple of people you have a couple of these like forward thinking coaches, athletic trainers who maybe have heard about this or just are in general more open to new. And, you find them, and that's a lot of like, that's just a lot of networking. And again, we've been so lucky that some of the early people that we were introduced to are, believers in the product and opening doors for us. One of our early customers is a current NHL player, James Van Riemsdyk. He's played over 1,000 games in the NHL. He understands recovery. Like his ability to stay in this game is in large part due to his ability to understand how to recover. And he was an early believer. He invested in us. He's opened doors. He's connected us to people who've opened doors in the military, for example. And so it's like, you just have to, I think in these early days, follow the doors that open. Yeah. And then now, as we sort of settle into like, okay, it's time to really build, we've just identified a couple of sports where it really seems like the adoption is going a little faster than others. And one of those is basketball, for example. So D1 and up basketball, we see adoption being a little faster. And sometimes that's just about the user experience. It's easy for them to grab these during a break, and they notice a really immediate effect. Their heart rates are lower. And so when you ask a strength and conditioning coach for D1 basketball team, what is 10 beats per minute worth to you? They get it. They're like, oh yeah, I want my athletes a little bit more recovered when they're going back out onto the court, because a lot of these games come down to like the last couple of minutes. Yeah. And it's like, who can just sustain the intensity of play long enough to win? And yeah.
I'll give a little shout out actually to another company.
Yeah. Sure.
So this is niche and it's not that well understood. We look at it a lot like electrolytes. There was a time when you probably, I don't know if you grew up having to earn your water break.
That's right.
Yeah. And now it's like,
you mean earn it, really?
Oh yeah, you're not playing good enough. Oh. No water break.
Yeah.
Y'all not, it's not, practice isn't going well.
I mean, this is like, so, but mentalities change. And now it's like, oh, we need athletes hydrated. And then how long did it take before, now it's like everyone and their brother is selling an electrolyte.
Well, no, it went from that to, like you said, and then hydrate, then here's a salt tablet. Yeah. And it's kind of like, all right, I'll eat 2 of these. Okay, and go back to practice, and I'm still cramping though, right? So it's it's like, kind of like you're trying to like plug these holes in the dam. People know there's an issue here,
right?
But they don't necessarily know how to solve it,
right? But I think it's that people didn't realize the power of hydration, then people didn't quite realize the power of electrolytes. But now, no serious athlete would compete without proper electrolytes, right?
My 11-year-old nephew trains with, like, he drinks Element when he's training. Yeah. I mean, and he is serious, right, about his performance.
Yes.
So basically, there's a lot of education to be done. Just going to give a shout out to another Colorado company, actually, called Nice Recovery. They came out, they actually tried our device first because they're like, it seems like there's something to this palm cooling thing. And they make a pretty fancy thermoelectric device. And so they're a company actually based in Boulder. They bought our device, tried it, was like, oh, there's something there. So they actually went out and built a thermoelectric device. So I don't know if you know about thermoelectrics, but it's a device they call the Rock. And they're out there also educating. So I actually have some now with the Denver Nuggets. The Joker's using their product. Yeah. But we have a very friendly relationship. Basically, our devices fit sort of different niches. For instance, a thermoelectric device their device is powerful, but won't work above about 85 degrees. So not really useful for outdoors or some of our safety issues. It's also quite a bit more expensive than what we sell, but they're out there educating as well. So I think it's going to take a set of people getting out there, talking about why this works, how it works, where it's useful, where it can fit in.
It's so funny because it's like, and I want to ask you as an athlete how you see this work, but it's like there was a time where people had to convince like investors what the internet was, right? Like, and then now everyone uses it, and I see this kind of being the exact same way to where it's all facets of life. But as an athlete, for you, Brandon, like, do you look at this and even now because you still train just to stay in shape? Do you look at this now, or do you as something that you can use in your regimen as or even as someone who played professionally and like, man, I would have love something like this?
Of course. How I look at it is that in the off seasons when I was working out, I was in that phase where I needed to increase my reps.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't for vanity. That wasn't for, it was actually for purpose. It was functional.
Yeah.
I needed to put on padding, natural padding, in order to go into the season. So I needed to get my squat up to 365. It, like, that was always a goal for me. It's like going to the season, being able to rep 365. Right. I needed to get my bench up to 315. Be able to rep 315. So it was always a battle of setbacks and strain muscles here, strain muscles there. Did you foam roll before the workout and the warm up, and in order to get to these different milestones, in order to kind of have these certain metrics that said to myself, I'm ready to go to the season.
Yeah.
So having a device which could to increase that, it'd be like, all right, well, maybe I can go from 365 to 385, this season. And how much horsepower, how much knee stability would that mean? How much, back and glute strength, that's just all safety measures. So that's just how I would process my off-season training and a need for a device like this.
And I got to say, if you know anyone who's getting ready for the next combine, where in a position where bench really matters, you got to tell them about this. Right. Because all you have to do is incorporate this for 6 to 8 weeks prior to the combine, and your reps at, 225, are going to skyrocket. And each rep for some people is more money. Like, why wouldn't you do this? I get really upset about it because I'm like, I want to see like any offensive defense, any lineman really, like anyone where the bench matters, for you. Then I think, this is just literally leaving money on the table. But I want to go back to the whole thing about like electrolytes and everything.
Yep.
I think athletic performance and sort of peak performance has really, it's really shifted a lot over the last 20 years, where we've gotten way more scientific about it. Also, your general population, like me, I care about my performance. I don't really compete in anything serious. Like my athletic endeavors are not my livelihood, but I still care about, how long am I going to live and how well am I going to live those years? And I want that peak performance, right? And I think we've all understood a lot that how you fuel your body, that really matters, right? You gotta give yourself the fuel in order to perform. And then we, maybe 10 years ago started figuring out, well, hydration really matters. If you're not hydrated and you don't have your right electrolytes, you're just not going to be able to perform at the same level as somebody else who's got those two things right. And the third piece, in my opinion, our opinion, is your thermoregulation. Are you managing heat? That is the third piece of this like performance trifecta, if you will. You've got to be fueled, hydrated, and cooled. Those three things together, now you can sustain your peak performance throughout the game. And I think we're going to start to see more athletes embracing this, where it's going to become very obvious who's cooling and who's not.
And everything's patented? Is that you got that all done?
Yeah, so we very early,
because if not, we won't let this episode go.
We very early followed a good IP strategy. So we have multiple design patents issued on the OGs, several design patents in process for what we call the next gen version, and a utility patent that just cleared a big hurdle. I don't know if you know about utility patents, but they take a while. So it just it had its first office action. A lot of the claims went through, and so there's a bit of rewriting, but it looks like it's on a very good path. Like we will have a granted utility patent pretty soon, actually, and then we hope to submit a few more patents for a few other fun things.
So tell me this: were you entered into the science fair when you were in elementary school or middle school or high school? Did you do any of that?
No, I mean, I hide it well these days. But I was an extremely socially awkward kid. What they call, I was probably very undiagnosed, what they used to call Asperger's. So, I was a weird kid, socially awkward, it comes out sometimes in odd ways, but I wasn't really into anything social. But I love science, I love learning, I love tinkering, I love building. And So for the last sort of 15 years, I've worked for a project at CU that's really amazing called the FET Interactive Simulations Project, where they make interactive simulations and games for teaching science and math. One of the most amazing projects used the world over. I mean, these simulations are run like 250 million times a year around the world. I mean, they're translated to every language. It's just an amazing project. And through that, I had to go to conferences and give talks and be at a booth and give presentations and sort of learn what I refer to, it's not a popular term these days, but my booth babe skills, like just really interacting with people,
looking good
and being smooth and schmoozing,
You're a very good booth babe.
Yeah, I'm a good booth babe. It just got used to that sort of interaction. So no, I wasn't into any kind of science fairs, nothing like that. I just liked learning, and I liked, doing hard math problems.
I mean, you can tell you literally looked up the papers after hearing the podcast, and well, let me look at these studies and examine.
Well, there's a difference between looking at the papers and
actually understanding. Yeah.
It's funny when
I would look at it. I'm the guy who would look at it. Oh, that's
to give you a little difference in philosophy. Evie, if you could distill Evie, she wants to win. She wants to win. I want to learn. So like when we were going into this,
perfect dynamic.
No. I mean, when we were going into this, I was like, I know nothing about raising money, investors, what this all looks like, injection molding. There's been so much learning. Like I know more about glues and adhesives than I did, and I knew a lot before. Like I know way more now. I mean, we could talk for hours about all that went into really making this happen. Yeah. I mean, one thing you should know. So Evie lives in Lakewood. I live in Boulder. When we were getting these ready to go out the door, Evie probably spent 2-3 months more or less living at my house
full time,
nearly full time. Like she'd go home for a couple days, come back. So when you say you seem to know each other well, it's like we have spent inordinate amounts of time
Thank
together.
God for those walks together to really make sure that you guys learn each other.
We're talking like, so we value, eating well, sleeping well, working out, things like that. So like I wouldn't, we would always like get maybe our 8 hours of sleep, but it was like 16 hours nonstop every single day for months trying to get these over the finish line. The last like 10% to get this right took a lot of effort, a lot of like definitely blood, sweat. I don't think tears.
Some yelling, just
a lot of yelling, yeah. But it was,
maybe some cursing.
Yeah.
I think we've already almost forgot about it at this point, but yeah.
And so how'd you learn the process? Was that you working out and being like, you need to do it in these intervals? Like, do the workout here, 3 minutes here. Like, how did you figure out that process? Because building it's one thing. Actually mixing it into your workout, you had to learn that as well, right?
I mean, a lot of that just comes from the science.
Which one's
this one's set up.
Oh,
so we can, I mean, a lot of that came out of like the Stanford research and other people's research. So that sort of 3 minutes between heavy sets of resistance training, that's the sweet spot, 2 to 3 minutes. There's been other research showing that, even as little as 60 seconds will give you a heart rate recovery benefit. So all of this has come from the science, and then just playing around with it, yourself, and learning what works for you. But
and just one, you just need one when you're working out, or do you do two?
Two is a little better than one.
Okay.
So it's interesting. You have a circulatory system, right? So if you imagine just holding one, some of that blood is going to be pre-cooled coming to the other hand. So you don't get quite double the effect when you hold both. You get the research shows about 1.6 times the effect for cooling. But 2 is better cooling than 1.
How did you feel? You feel like you're more relaxed?
Yeah. My heart rate is lowered. I feel chill.
Yeah.
We know a few podcasters who use it when they're podcasting to just sort of like stay focused. And
I can see that.
Yeah. So
I mean, I'm ADHD really bad, so I could see this being something that would definitely calm you from just being overstimulated, right? I mean, it probably has multiple effects for a variety of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And some we haven't talked about, but are super interesting. we work with Alabama Adapted Athletics. This is the specifically the wheelchair basketball programs there, which are the best in the nation
By far.
by far. They are, they a lot of those players play for Team USA in the Paralympics. But what's really interesting is if you have a spinal cord injury, you often do not sweat below the level of your injury. And so thermoregulation is an even bigger deal for these athletes. So they're using it. That also, a lot of people who have various autoimmune conditions will have thermoregulation issues and they will overheat. And so we have people who are, they're athletic. The heat issues really hold them back. And so if you have like POTS is one of them, for example, where you can really quickly overheat and then you're out of the game, right? So we see a lot of people who are using this to treat some of those issues.
And do you know about how sickle cell trait can affect athletes?
No.
Obviously, there's sickle cell anemia, but a lot of African American athletes, I think it's like 1 in 6 sometimes, I think is the stat, have sickle cell trait. So sickle cell trait, I think it's if one of your parents might have that sickle cell gene. I don't know that. I shouldn't quote the statistics. But if you have sickle cell trait, you basically can get heat stressed more easily. It's like your blood is fine, but if you have that trait, when you're heat stressed, the blood cells start to sickle. So, this might be a contributing factor. You see obviously a lot of heat stress injuries in Texas high school football, and then it's often during practice, and it's often with linemen. And, it's just well known that anyone with sickle cell trait, which is basically in the U.S. population, pretty much only African Americans, are more susceptible to this. And this can be very dangerous, right? Because it can happen so fast. It's like you're fine. All of a sudden you're heat stressed and it's like goes off a cliff, basically.
Yes.
So that can be, a real preventative intervention. So if someone during practice, for instance, just during their breaks, if you're hydrating and cooling them, you're helping to keep them in a safer position.
I'm curious on what the advantages are of using the narwhal at altitude. And versus at sea level.
I think the chances actually, I'm going to guess here, which is it has really much more to do with what are the atmospheric conditions.
Right.
As in, if you're down in the south where it's hot and humid, your sweat's not working as well. So it's like your thermoregulation is a complex mix of what's going on. I'm not sure if there's much evidence that being up at altitude is affecting your thermoregulation because we have nice dry air up here, right? So your evaporation system is working well. So unclear, I'd say. I don't know if there's much difference there.
And what about the lasting effects of cooling? So say I'm training for 8 weeks using the narwhals, and I'm cooling, I'm regulating, and then I'm gonna go compete. On Sunday, possibly without it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Is there a lasting effect that I'm going to be able to retain?
Well, in the sense of if you've conditioned, right? So
that's right.
If the neat thing is, let's say you've palm cooled up where you've done more volume, so you've done more reps, so you've gotten stronger. It's a conditioning effect.
And now I'm going to the combine to do the lift.
You don't need. So Evie, once she reached her top set of 14 pull-ups, that first set's happening without cooling. She's cooling after that.
Yeah. So what it's really doing is allowing you to stack more bricks, and then whatever result you have that now.
Right.
Now, if you stop training, if you stop squatting, for example, then you are going to become detrained, but that's going to happen over the normal progression that it would happen anyway. So no, you train, you get your 225 bench up to, 50, whatever reps. If that's your top set, you'll be able to do that when you go.
Yeah. And that's really, so palm cooling and resistance training, where it makes a big difference, where you see the biggest benefit is if you're willing to add more sets, because there's this odd effect where you can basically add more volume And interestingly, this is mentioned in the research papers, but the mechanism is not understood. Less soreness. So people report, even though doing their more volume, less DOMs.
Yeah.
So people don't quite understand why that is, but that means you can train harder the next time. You can train harder the next time. And
which is the whole point of ice bathing.
Yeah.
How I came up was, get the recovery, get the muscle recovery, and then you get to train harder the next day. You get to come back and, theoretically you be able to compete because you've recovered, right? Or right now I like contrast.
Okay.
And so, whenever I get incredibly sore from training, I'll just do a contrast, hot jetted tub, cold shower.
Do you like to sauna?
I just don't have the access to it at my place. I think I prefer infrared sauna, but mainly just because it's soothing. I haven't done it to train or done it the infrared sauna to compete. I know I'm using the infrared light pads. I know I use those for recovery, and I find benefit in those.
Interesting.
But the average person can use this as well, right? I mean, we're saying all the industrial centers, but just a guy who's like, I work out a handful of days on the week, I'm going to see kind of results from this as well. I don't need to be a peak. I don't need to be a Brandon Lloyd as much as I want to be.
I think one of the places we've seen, let me give you an example of an obvious one, because one of the things we found is a lot of people don't actually want to increase they don't want to do extra sets. But a great example of clear gain that fits into your workout is if you do interval work. So for instance, if you're someone that like does a HIIT workout on the assault runner or assault bike, or you do a Norwegian 4x4, or you do a Tabata interval, if there's a rest break that just naturally fits in, like you do a lot of sprint work on your assault runner.
Yeah, you just cool. So basically, you go to the gym, maybe you run for 3 or 4 minutes, then take a break for 3 minutes, and you repeat that 4 times. That's a really classic way to improve your VO2 max. For example, if you cool between intervals, so you're not doing anything different, you're just cooling during your break instead of standing there, you will be able to run faster in your subsequent intervals. And what we see is that this is anecdotal evidence now being reported to us through people who are using the Narwhals, and we're hoping that some research will come out soon. But they are increasing their VO2 max more than they would without it.
We had a Norwegian elite skier that had been at a VO2 max of 60 for a while.
Which is really high.
Which is quite high. It's quite elite. In his summer training camp, he did the exact same thing he'd done, literally Norwegian 4x4s. All he did was use the Narwhals. It went up 10% to 66, which is like an insane number. So it's that you're more recovered for your next version or next set of interval. You can just go a little harder. And each week that you're going a little harder, you're doing a little better.
And this is this matters to the general population, because more and more research is coming out that, again, if you want to live well, you want to live long, and you want to live those longer, later years well, there are basically 2 things you need. And one is muscle mass, so you don't fall over. And the second is VO2 max. You want a strong cardiovascular system. So you want your body to efficiently use oxygen. And even regular people who are not elite athletes, we need this, because it's quite clear, like if your VO2 max drops below a certain level, you're basically going to be in a nursing home. It's very clear that if you don't maintain this, you are no longer self-sufficient. And so I think as people are, trying to regain fitness or trying to preserve fitness, this type of, interval work is really important, and this will just kind of turbocharge you. So if
you do some interval work?
Yeah.
I do not. I just Olympic lift and, basically just like sculpting at this point. I run and I do cardio. and I do cardio for those reasons, just because obviously, we seem like we're listening to the same similar individuals.
Yeah.
And I love how it's being reframed as a quality of life. The blue zones, and and it's more of like the total package of the folks you surround yourself with. how you eat, and just redefining what it means to age gracefully.
Health
And
span is the
the
thing
health
we
span,
love.
exactly. And the measurement, being able to bend over and pick up a grandchild, or being able to pick up a sack of groceries and carry it for 150 yards, right? It's just like simple, like life, quality of life things that I'm focused on.
Mm-hmm.
And as I grow older,
Right.
I know, as you were talking about this, and you think about the regular person, it's kind of like, if a wife out there buys this for a husband and he just mows the lawn,
Oh, yeah.
maybe just filling this up and sitting it outside, and maybe
we do
in
have
between
people who
breaks,
do that.
People who do.
yeah, just in between
that's
breaks,
serious,
picking it up. I'm just trying to think like the functional,
Yeah.
the
I'm going to
functional
throw
ways
two
folks
other
can use
things
it.
out there. One is, I actually originally developed these, like I said, at the climbing gym. We actually work with a lot of climbers. And so people, Colorado, just even if you're the weekend warrior who goes to the gym, even just getting more out of your workout. So climbing, I don't know if you've ever done it, but you get that intense pump in your forearm.
Mm-hmm.
And there's good evidence that this drastically reduces that pump. So you just have more fun in your session, get back to your climbs faster, get more out of your workout. And then the other one is youth athletes. So, I mean, neither of us have kids, but I'm sure you've seen this, and your niece and nephew, these people go and they play these like weekend long tournaments,
games,
out in the sun in the summer, and this. So
that was the first thing I thought of for my little dude. He's only 7, but I was like, man, when he gets older, and because he's been playing baseball, I'm like, dude, these kids, like, we made homemade air conditioners for them. It's like, imagine them just being able to cool off and reset themselves.
Exactly.
As children.
Yeah, we have. So I'm sure you saw some of the headlines this year about MLB players puking on field because of heat illness. So it's becoming quite a problem. And yeah, we work with a number of like traveling baseball, traveling softball athletes. One in particular, this one softball athlete, she suffered from muscle cramps. So that muscle cramps are the first stage of heat related illness, right? So first you cramp, then you reach heat exhaustion, and then, hopefully you never get there, but heat stroke is that third stage. So she was very susceptible to heat cramps. They tried everything to cool her down. They had fans, they had the neck towels, they did everything. She hated some things, she just hated some things, didn't work. Anyway, they brought in the Narwhals for her, and she started using them. And not only has she not experienced muscle cramps, but she has been able to pitch. She's a pitcher. I think they said 20% more than she was prior. And this is in the heat in the South, where they're playing these day-long tournaments and back-to-back games. And then what's awesome is, so the mom, I was talking to the mom, and she was like, not only is my daughter playing better and not suffering from heat illness, but she's not irritable. So now we're getting along more during
I'm sure
the
kids
heat.
have never been irritable.
Because everyone knows when you're hot, you're not, a happy person.
Yeah.
And so, not only has it helped, her play, but it has helped the relationship, which I think is awesome.
One of the things I'm trying to figure out is even just the psychological part of cooling.
Yeah.
Right. Knowing I'd be incredibly hot, and then there's like the sensation of when you put the cold rag on your neck and you feel that that sensation. Is what I'm feeling now? Is that real? Because I feel like my skin is a lot cooler.
It is real.
After
it's the
holding.
sense of so your sweat rate's going to reduce. Some other things are going to happen, but so let's talk about neck cooling a little, right?
Yes.
When you neck cool, what that basically does is the regulator of your thermoregulation is your hypothalamus in your brain. Mm-hmm. That sends a signal to your hypothalamus that because we get all our information from our periphery. Mm-hmm. That's saying you're doing well now. So it starts to shut down some of those natural mechanisms of cooling when you can actually still be heating up. So neck cooling is kind of a double-edged sword. There's nothing wrong. Like if you've got someone who's hot, we went to this competition called the Firefighter Challenge a bunch, where it's like firefighters run in gear in this obstacle course, and they come off they are just bright red. Some of them are close to fainting. Give them the Narwhals and put a cold towel around the neck. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem with just putting a cold towel. So if someone's on that border where, imagine a good example would be, I'm a high school football player, a lineman who I'm not feeling so great. I come out, you put the cold towel on my neck. my core body temperature is still rising. And I'm like, I think I'm good to go. Get back in there. And now you overshoot because your body is getting the perception that you're cooling off, but you haven't actually removed much heat.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like, look, we all know that feeling. That feels good. You know, you cold a cold drink to this, and that is an undeniable perceptual feeling. And sometimes that can be useful. Sometimes all you need, you're not in a danger zone. You just need that extra, like, I feel better to push through whatever it is. But you're not actually removing heat.
Yeah, you're not changing anything physiological. So
you said you can't feel it. You have no idea.
Well,
Right.
you like putting a cold towel around your neck isn't going to remove heat, so you're not going to see like a core temperature change. It's not going to affect anything that is considered sort of like a fatigue marker. So your heart rate, your lactate levels, things like that, things that actually contribute to your performance. And so a lot of the research on neck cooling is like on athletes is it does not extend your time to exhaustion. So a lot of people think it does, but it doesn't. So again, if you're playing at an elite level, I mean, do everything to play at that level, right? If you want the cold towel, put the cold towel around your neck, but also understand that if what you're trying to do is also manage your heat so that you can play stronger, you need to remove that heat, and you're not going to do that with a cold towel, but you will do it with a palm cooling device like the Narwhals.
I really like how you talk about the three areas.
Yeah.
It's hydration, fueling, and cooling, right? And
Yeah.
so I feel like a lot of young athletes, they're not even really hydrating. And parents just don't understand how to fuel them properly.
True.
Where it's, you know, bars and sandwiches, right? You know, and even in pro sports, I was coming up in an era where we were trying to juggle that. You know, what's the right food? It's like when I was playing, it was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They thought that was gonna at halftime peanut butter and jelly wedge sandwiches and wedges and orange wedges and bananas. That was like that's your halftime snack. Like that's how you know we're.
Now go get them.
There's all these kind of iterations of like what's gonna work, and so. What I was doing was I was bringing morning breakfast with me to the game. So I put a couple chicken breasts in there. I put a little thing of steak. I throw some pasta in there. And so and I came in at halftime because I'd be hungry because I didn't really feel like eating before the game and because I was nervous. And then I didn't really feel like drinking before the game because I was nervous. And so I'm just kind of going into these games probably severely dehydrated and underfueled. And then you go into this intense environment. So it's like and so it's out of this experimentation that was going on throughout my career on just like how do I fuel myself and service myself in this stressful environment. So sometimes I come in at halftime and I eat a couple bites of the pasta and a little bit of the chicken, and then you know. So
did you ever not feel nervous? Did you ever get to the point, or just every game was nerve wracking?
Yeah, it was like you know, because like for me, it was like you know, at least I feel alive. I always felt like if I didn't feel nervous, then I wasn't ready.
Yeah,
right.
That's fair.
And just like having those nerves was like put me on edge, and so I was like sharp. So I felt sharp, and you know it's kind of like fasting, where it's like you know they say when you're fasting, then your brain's operating a little bit sharper. So I just kind of always felt like on edge when I was like that. I never wanted to be in there full. I even had a Sunday this morning, dog. I'm about to go off today.
No, I mean, but that's just what you bring up. I mean, I think that so much of athletics has. They figured out like how do we fuel you, how do we recover you, how do we train you, and this is that next untapped frontier.
Right?
How do we get you your thermoregulation in a place where you're performing at that most elite level?
Right.
You know, that's the next place we think.
That's right. Yeah, late in the game, like you were saying earlier. It's like late in the game. When you really need the body to respond and the brain to respond in those clutch situations. It's like it's powerful.
One of the things we see, so it's interesting, basketball is a great example. So women's basketball, there's often a big, right? A girl who is larger than the other people on the team, and she is naturally not going to be able to play the whole game. She's a larger human. Her thermoregulation is going to be tougher, sprinting up and down the court. She's just moving more mass. She's got more insulation, you know, it's just a bigger human.
Yes.
So bigger humans are going to have a harder time staying in the game longer. And if you can go to a coach and be like, what's an extra minute of that person's play going to mean for you?
Huge.
You know, it can be huge, right? Or we have some of these players. You know, it's interesting on when we with basketball, it's like either the really large people or sometimes on these college teams, there's someone who plays 38 minutes of the game. I mean, they play almost the entire game. And it's like that every single timeout matters. You can recover them a little better. That's mattering hugely.
Yes. And then is everybody's temperature different?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all different.
Right. So
Yeah.
is 50 degrees the magic?
Oh, I mean,
is it
it's basically
the
when
range?
you're warm, when there's very few people. We've only run into one person. There was a firefighter, a young guy, who these were a little too cold for him. So it's pretty much the magic number in that I think he had something else going on because we were at these firefighter competitions. He would come off looking like white as a sheet, green, like something else was going on. Oh, is that the one with water in it or no?
No, I think that's a good one.
Yeah, so 50 degrees is pretty much the sweet spot. And these usually stay a little above 50, where everyone's vasoconstriction threshold's a little different. But most people, when they're warm, they can hold that no problem, not vasoconstrict, feel cool, not an issue.
And how long does it stay cool like that? Like this one's still, sorry, Brandon.
Yeah.
That one's still.
So it's going to depend a little on the ambient conditions because it's a passive system. But like in a gym type environment where it's reasonably temperature controlled, even without the insulating cover on, 2 to 3 hours. So people use them in a basketball game, the entire game, they stay cool. In hot outdoor conditions, with the insulating cover on, in between uses, you can get about 2 hours is about the max. Not shaded in hot outdoor conditions with the insulating cover on, about an hour.
So
per cool pack.
This stays in here. I don't have to put water inside. And for the people listening, I'm holding the inside up. What is this called?
Yeah, so that's what we call the cool not cold pack. That's
the cool
part
not
of the
cold
secret
pack.
Yeah, that's part of the secret sauce.
And this is not water.
That's not water. It's a phase change material that has a melting point above that of ice. So to bring you back to a little high school physics, if you took ice out of your freezer, normal American freezer is 0 degrees Fahrenheit. That ice is going to warm up till it reaches its melting point. And then when it reaches its melting point, it's going to stay at 32 degrees until it melts. So what a phase change material going from solid to liquid does is two really interesting things. It gives you a stable temperature and it stores a lot of energy. So, you know, here in Colorado, we get some snow and then you can look around, you're like, that snow pile's been there for like a month. Why is that? Well, when you go through a phase change, and the numbers for water are a good example, it takes 4 joules of energy to raise 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. It takes 337 joules of energy to melt 1 gram of ice at its melting point. So it's an enormous energy difference. Like you get almost 100 times more energy storage in something that is frozen and going through a phase change. So that material it's a melting point well above that of ice. So you freeze that, put it in the base, and just fill it up with room temperature water to the fill line. And the water acts just as a working fluid to conduct the heat from your hand into the base and dump that energy into that cool pack. So all you do, those are completely reusable. You freeze those either on ice or in a freezer, drop it in the base, fill it up, shake it up, and you're good.
And for the people listening, it's a cylinder. So the Narwhals in a cylinder base, and then this
cool
not cold pack.
The CNC
looks like
pack,
a little, looks like a little
mini water bottle.
Mini water bottle.
Yeah,
exactly, water jug.
Yeah,
and then this nipple at the top. Does that have anything to do with the cooling? But these these pipes, copper pipes,
they're
have
in
these
contact with the
pointing
water.
They're contacting the water. Yeah, the water's sort of what's acting as what we call the working fluid,
right?
To conduct the heat from those pipes to your hand into the cold pack.
Yeah, so it doesn't have come in contact.
No,
with the
it
cold
doesn't
pack.
need to come in contact with that.
Nice, and so it's frozen or sitting on ice. It could be at whatever temperature. That's not going to be an exact science.
Yeah.
And then it goes in, and then the room temperature water. That's not an exact science.
Mm-mm.
And then when the top is screwed on, like how soon before it's ready to?
If you cocktail shake it for like 30 seconds, it'll basically be at temperature.
It'd be at
Yeah.
temperature.
It equilibrates quite quickly. And I should have brought a spare heat pipe. Heat pipes are this. I'm gonna bore you with some science. Heat pipes are this really.
No, you're actually blowing my mind.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much I don't know until I hear you talk. I was like, oh
I
my
know,
god,
that's my
I was
like every day I learn something.
I was like, usually I just go to my ice machine. I'm all, yeah, I want a cold drink.
Not cold enough. 2 more cubes.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, too many.
No, I learned like how much 1 cube of ice melting in water was going to raise the temperature. Like, oh man.
Listen, I'm just dumbfounded
math.
that I'm like, wait, the ice melted in my cup, but it didn't overflow in the cup. I'm like, and you're over here, yeah. You're another level, my friend.
But heat pipes, this is a really, really interesting technology, which is it's a hollow copper tube that's sealed at both ends, and on the inner wall of that copper tube is what's called a wicking structure. And when they make the tube, they put a little bit of water in it, just a very small amount of water, pull a vacuum and seal it. So we've got this sealed copper tube that's under vacuum with a little water inside it and a wicking structure on the inner wall. And what happens is when you hold that, your hand is actually warm enough because that water is under vacuum. So we're up here in Denver, Colorado. Lower air pressure, which means water boils at a lower temperature. If you keep lowering that pressure down towards vacuum, water boils at a lower and lower temperature. So when you hold that, your hand boils the little bit of water inside there, it travels as a vapor, hits down, drops its heat, wicks back up the walls, and re-evaporates. So it's a no moving parts heat pump. And what's so neat about heat pipes, so for instance, something you may not have thought about, there was actually, at the coolest thing in Colorado, there was a...
I haven't thought about a lot of this.
There was a satellite company. And so satellites are really interesting. The reason these are used in space is the satellite's facing the sun. That side of the satellite's boiling hot.
Yeah.
The back of the satellite is freezing cold.
Wow.
But you've got to move heat from one side of the satellite to the other because there's no convection. There's no air in space. But heat pipes will do that. You can move the heat from the front of the satellite to the back using these heat pipes. They have about 100 times the thermal conductivity of a normal piece of copper. There's actually a good video long ago on our Instagram where we do a little experiment. Like if you take a heat pipe and put it in cold water, if you're holding it, it instantly feels cold. Whereas if you were holding like a copper rod, it would take some time for you to feel that. But it's basically almost instantaneous. And what that does is it just keeps moving that heat away from your hand. Like you notice when you hold that, the temperature doesn't really change on your hand. It just keeps moving that heat away from your hand. So I didn't actually know much about these. I didn't know about them at all. And when I was kind of tinkering around trying to think, how do I move heat from the outside into this insulated vessel, I hit it on heat pipes. I'm like, oh, these are amazing. And it turns out they're everywhere. They're in your electric car. They're in your cell phone. There's a version of them. Because if you think about your cell phone, it's getting quite hot on the chip. And you need to move that heat into a bigger area. Computers, yeah, computer heat sinks have these. So they're actually quite ubiquitous, but most people don't realize they're around.
Well, I think you guys are quite modest, and this conversation has been like mind-blowing. And I know that Brandon was super excited before you guys came on. I think you guys are truly like just learning from you guys and hearing about this, and I think Brandon would agree. You guys are changing the game
We are changing the game.
like 100% in sports and just everyday life, from like firefighters to just people working in like industrial occupations. What is next? And then I think we're definitely almost out of time here, but I think like what's next for you guys, and like where do people find you as a resource to purchase this or learn more about it?
You want to take the first question? I'll take the second.
Yeah, what's next? I mean, there's certainly growing the business, but we have requests for a couple accessories for these. So for instance, athletic trainers are like, I love these. I really want a way to carry them around for my team and to carry them on, to have something easy that I could take on the road that I can put them in. So we actually have working with a local Denver company to design a soft good, like a tote,
dolly.
A tote for them. Yeah, because it's sort
the
of
waters.
Yeah,
the
just
water
like
bottles.
the Gatorade thing, you'll have the
Gatorade
Narwhal
thing.
totes.
Pull them out.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one accessory that's coming along. I have an idea for another type of device. So the safety issue is a really interesting one where there's a lot of people who are interested in this, but they're like, we sometimes work out in the desert, far away from everything. We don't have power. We need something that we don't need to even think about setting up. It's just ready to go when we need it. So I have an idea that I think will work, that I need to prototype more, but that will have another device that can work in those situations where
We'll just go to McGuckins. You'll figure that out.
Yeah, basically. If we had something that would get nice and cool almost instantly to that right temperature, but could sit there for a year in a safety kit until someone needs it, that would be a true game changer for safety. So that's something we'd like to do.
Yeah, or plug in.
Yeah, I mean, some people don't even have power. Cool. I mean, one of the problems is we didn't realize this. Oil and gas can't plug it in. It needs to be safe and can't spark. So there's a lot of interesting, these things you don't know about until you start working in this, where it's like, they actually like the fact that it's not powered. The military likes the fact that it has no electronics. They're like, wait, no electronics, no one can spy on it, nothing that. They like that. Yeah. So there's this interesting mix of some people the average consumer is like, I just want to charge it. But these other industries, they're like, we like the fact that it's not.
And then what about a smaller one that'll fit on a carabiner?
The problem is it's energy storage. You can't actually make it much smaller because you need to store a certain amount of energy for it to work. But this other device,
we're talking about those joules.
Yeah, those joules, exactly.
We're gonna get them going again. We'll have some sort of equation. Good thing there's no whiteboard. We would have been in school.
No,
we would have been in school.
I'd make math fun, but I think if this other idea works, it could be that solution where, it's a lot lighter and you can just kind of use it when you want it. I think that's something that we're excited about, and hopefully in the next sort of year, we'll come out with at least something that's an early stage on the market. So
awesome. We'll be looking out for that.
Yeah. But if anyone's interested and wants to learn more, we're apexcoollabs.com. We're Apex Cool Labs on Instagram and YouTube, and we love answering questions about this technique, palm cooling, obviously our device, but not only. If you have any questions about how it could be used, please reach out. We love, as you can tell, talking about it.
Yeah, people reach out to us. If you email us, Instagram,
it'll be one of us.
Our website chat, it's one of us. We're always happy to talk.
Well, I think it's awesome, Colorado company, and getting on I'm from Denver. So we'll definitely plug you guys and let our audience know where they can find you as well and get the product.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Brandon.
All right, let's go cool off somewhere.